live.
Hit the
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the SCB Steelers Podcast presented by DEK Roofing Incorporated. And we are very, very proud to be part of the Variety Sports Network. And the show originates from the Bradshaw Bourbon Studio, at least for one more week. We'll get into that later. In any case, the season is upon us. Claude, great to see you. Hello, everybody
Claude.
watching.
Hells to the Claude.
And Aaron's in, and by the way, I think Aaron was in Latrobe last night, and I'm going to tell you why. Russell Wilson showed up yesterday at St. Vincent, and it looked just fine. He was talking. He was great. He looked just fine. He wakes up this morning, and he's got some kind of calf strain. And that means, guess who takes over the first team reps? The Ohio State Buckeye, Justin Fields. I think Aaron was doing something last night, messing around.
I'm going to just tell you this. I'm just going to tell you this. Bigger.
That's great.
I'm just going to tell you this. I've been drinking, but second of all, those Rudy or Benedict Hall beds are not for the faint of heart. I'm just saying. Russell Wilson realized that he wasn't staying at the Four Seasons when he went away to training camp. It was like, oh shit, this is a little more rugged than I thought.
Yeah, obviously this will be a heavy training camp edition. We'll talk about some of the stuff that went on today, the first day of practice and stuff, and everything else. But Scarps, obviously we all see guys bring in everything from video game systems to huge TVs, and so can a guy bring in his own bed if he wanted to?
Yeah, they have a contract or some sort of agreement with a furniture company, and they can bring in whatever accommodations they like. I don't think it depends on if you're a veteran or a rookie. But I always looked at it as, why wouldn't you want your players to be accommodated? So this whole Russell Wilson calf thing, I don't know what to make of it.
It came out of nowhere. I mean, the guy looked fine, and all of a sudden it's like, oh boy, he's got a stiff calf.
Man, everybody in the comments is just killing me right now. But yeah, I mean, there are accommodations that can be made. I mean, I don't want to say that these guys sleep on not comfy beds, but it's not the Four Seasons. It's also not a Motel 6. It is somewhere in between. But the Russell Wilson calf thing, and I know we'll get into this, but Aaron, I hate you right now for tweeting for posting it right now. But you think you know me. You think you know me. The Russell Wilson calf thing is kind of strange. And the reason I say it's strange is because the whole offseason we have said that there's no quarterback controversy, there's no competition. Nope. But today makes you think. The conspiracy theorist in me thinks.
Oh my God. How couldn't it?
I mean, listen, we don't talk politics on the show, and that's fine.
Nope.
But I sit there and think, holy shit, is there something more to this than we know? And I don't think there is. I think Russell Wilson maybe might have lifted his kid the wrong way. I got a kid.
It happens, doesn't it?
Sometimes I lift the kid and I get pain in parts of my body I've never known possible.
Yes.
So it could have been something freak like that, but not as good as Steelers freak. You're listening. I know you are.
Oh,
but
yeah,
the point,
he's out there.
but yeah, I mean, it could be something minor, but still, it's just such a strange timing for that thing to happen.
Yeah, and Freak says there's something about the fitness tests they always do in the afternoon, and he could have tweaked it then, and obviously I think he probably did something along those lines. And look, it is July 25th. They are not going to take any unnecessary actions here with a 35, 36-year-old quarterback. Just okay, Russell, we get it. You already know the playbook inside and out. You know the personnel like crazy. Just relax. Let's take care of that calf. And at the same time, it also gives Fields some time with the first team that he might not have had. So, but I agree with you. It is a little weird. I don't know. Weird.
Yeah, and I think Steelers Freak mentioned in the chat that Russ tweaked it during their initial fitness test or whatever. And that happens from time to time. There was a cornerback from the Vikings that blew out his ACL today. So if a little hamstring tweak is all we have to deal with, we're fortunate.
Great point.
Guys show up at camp and do those initial runs, and not saying that Russell Wilson didn't work out during the offseason, because he obviously did, but when you're on the field in that heat, those fields don't have the best footing conditions either. That they're not there were reports of guys slipping all over the place today again. So you go out and you run on something that's not turf, it's grass, and it's probably been maintained-ish for the for the last 11 months. So yeah, it happens. I'm not worried about it.
Nah, I'm not either. It just, it was like, as soon as that came across, it was like, oh, great, here we go. Now people are going to ramp up the conspiracy and the competition and everything else.
Van Jefferson had one great catch today, so he's obviously wide receiver 2 from here on out.
Ian, we will touch on the training camp heroes, believe me.
All right, football in shorts.
Exactly. Freak, no, Ben is not at a mandatory AA meeting. I believe he's in California. He didn't really elaborate on what he's doing there. Yeah, that's right, Free. He's holding out for more money. Good luck with that. Good luck with that, buddy.
Wait, he gets paid?
Well, that's what I mean by good luck with that.
Yeah. He's probably at a Dave Matthews cover band concert.
I would think it's got to be something along those lines. We know it's not Styx, because he's not a fan of Styx. But don't ever let him tell you that he doesn't get on his feet for Renegade, because we know he does.
We do.
He's drafting his fantasy team, Aaron. I don't think he's drafting his fantasy team.
I like the chat. The chat is on.
The chat's
Wago tonight.
I
love it.
You guys have brought it for the beginning of the 2024 season.
Outstanding. Ian, what is something that you look forward to now that the Steelers are back? Is there like a positive thing that you, besides the obvious that they're back, but I mean, is there anything in particular?
I mean, I think now, we've made it through the off season, right? When I always talk about the only news is bad news, basically, that we've made it through that point. And yes, there can still be bad news. Guys can get hurt and things like that. But now you've got everybody there at camp. Everybody reported. We don't have to deal with any holdout drama. The Steelers kind of have that hard deadline of, the beginning of the regular season's the end of contract negotiations. So guys like a Cam Hayward who are looking for a new deal, things like that, they're in a limited window, but they're all there with the team in one place now. So now's the time when these things sometimes get hammered out because they know the deadline and they're all there every day. They're not trying to chase people down while they're on vacation or whatever. And it's back to business. It's day one. There's still a long way to go. It's all small building blocks and all that, but it's exciting to get rolling. It's exciting to get there. The doldrums of summer where there was nothing happening are over. So it's back to it, and it's the slow ramp up. But I think I try not to get too excited about like we said, the camp heroes, because we're going to hear about that. We've heard about the OTA heroes this year just the same as every other year in the past, whether it was Chris Rainey or Justin Brown or whoever was lighting, or Dree Archer was lighting it up at OTAs. And but we'll see now that they're in shorts now. They'll put on pads next week, and then we'll get to see them in a preseason game. But as we learned last year, even preseason games don't actually mean that much, because you can go 4-0 in the preseason and look like you have a quarterback that knows what he's doing, but then you play one quarter of a regular season game and you're like, oh shit, we have no fucking clue what we're doing. So
what quarterback was that, Ian?
It was a first-round draft pick out of Pitt. So it wasn't Dan Marino. Well, not him. No.
Dan Marino.
But yeah.
Ryan, what as a fan, what do you look forward to this time of year? What's something that brings joy to your heart?
I really appreciate the fact that it was a quiet off season. I think the biggest story this off season was that Najee didn't get a 5th-year option. The Steelers to pick up Najee's 5th-year option. And I was totally okay with that. And then today, the reports are that George Pickens and his wide receiver coach got into it. And I sit there and think automatically, okay, you had a quiet off season in terms of nobody got in trouble. Right. There wasn't any, there's no extravagant sort of, not accolades. I'm drunk. Anyway, just saying.
Words are hard.
There was no extravagance, but today there's multiple reports that George Pickens and his wide receiver coach got into a heated argument about being coached. And I'm going to say this right now. You had a quiet off season. Despite adding Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and Patrick Queen, you had a quiet off season, which is number one priority. The first day of training camp, you already got Pickens and Azani.
Yeah.
Is that his name?
Yeah. Yep.
The wide receivers coach getting into it, and it was because of a lack of effort. And I know every asshole on Twitter and on every asshole on Twitter is going to tell me, "Oh, George Pickens is him. He's wide receiver 1." And on the first day of training camp, the wide receivers coach, thank you, Big Ben Burner. And on the first day of training camp, the wide receivers coach and George Pickens are getting into it. That's not a good thing. So everything that's happened this offseason, or everything that's not happened this offseason, goes out the window when on the first day of training camp, there's reports that George Pickens and the wide receivers coach are battling.
So we'll get into that a little bit.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Just saying.
And the other thing too, as was mentioned too, was Najee Harris. He did not speak to the media at all during OTAs. There was a report that he didn't have to, but then when the mandatory mini camp started, he did have to, and then they found out, well, actually he doesn't have to. And so yesterday were his first comments on it. And I look at it like, I would be disappointed too if I were him. I mean, to me, it's very much like you've worked hard, you think you're getting a raise, and then all of a sudden you find out you're not getting a raise, and it's a bummer. I get it. But he also understands it's a business, likes it in Pittsburgh, but he gets it. And Ian, based on what you know and what you see every Sunday, I mean, did this have anything more to do with just money?
For Najee?
Yeah.
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 Sorry, we were talking about, but I was talking about Pickens in the chat.
Yeah,
and Najee here,
we'll
so-
come back to Pickens. Yeah.
My bad.
No worries. I'm just making sure I'm answering the right question. I mean, running backs have a very short lifespan. Not lifespan, short shelf life. There we go. I've drank less than Ryan has, but can still talk.
I can't still talk. Don't answer that question. Go ahead.
Najee was on the older end when he was drafted, so he's already, entering his late 20s, which is usually when running backs start to see a decline. So some of it's about the money, but some of it's also about the stability that he's not going to have, after this season, he doesn't know where he's going to be playing next year.
Mm-hmm.
And to have, yes, the guaranteed money is great, but as a first round pick, he's made pretty darn good money. More money in a season than I'll ever make in a year. But nevertheless,
me too.
It's some of it's the money that, the second contract's where you make your money, but also it's the stability of not having to bounce around as a free agent to team after team after team. But the way contracts are going these days, whether it's running backs or wide receivers, it's not as bad as the transfer portal in college, but like free agency, there's just so many players that hit the market now. And even a contract's not really unless you have guaranteed money in your contract, there's no guarantee you're even going to still be with that team because heck, Russell Wilson, Denver's paying him $40 million this year to not play for $38 million to not be there. So, I think that stability means a lot too. But I think you're right that money is a factor because this is his one chance to cash in his second contract.
Yeah. And I fight with people on Twitter or X or the artist formerly known as Twitter, the platform formerly known as Twitter, about this all the time. And they say, oh, the Steelers are doing things differently now. They're not. Contract wise, they're not. They're not doing it. They're not guaranteeing money. They're just not. Anyway, but getting back to your point, Ian, especially after the Ramondre Stevenson deal. Sorry, my one dog is walking across the floor.
It's a good dog.
Yeah, she's a good girl. Getting after that Ramondre Stevenson deal, the Steelers are not signing Najee Harris to that deal. They're not. And so like I've been critical of Najee, but like he deserves better. He deserves better than to hear, oh, we don't know where the offense is going. Oh, is that why you hired a guy that runs the ball 800 times a season? Like it's just I don't know.
Well, no, your point is
I don't like that. I don't like
I don't like it either. What did they also say today about Pat Freiermuth? Omar Khan said, oh, we got a lot of faith in him. We'll take care of the contract. Whenever they said the same thing about Kenny Pickett. We got a lot of faith in him, so yeah. I mean, words don't really mean a whole hell of a lot. And I think Najee and Scarps, I would ask you this real quick, do you think he was coached up at all today by PR or is he just a mature young man and handled it well?
Well, that was yesterday.
Yes, yesterday.
Yeah. I think that he went into Rooney Hall and then the PR team was like, you need to talk. And he was like, fuck that. I don't want to talk. And they were like, nah, you need to talk. And he did. And he talked. And I've said this repeatedly, and I said this on the show repeatedly. The only two guys that have ever gotten punished for speaking the truth were Chooks, who's gone, and Najee, who's still here. And
for now.
Yeah. And I'm gonna tell you, it people think, oh, I'm some asshole or I'm this disgruntled ex-employee, whatever. When you publicly tell people that there's no order or structure or rules, that's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. And he said exactly that. And he said it right after they lost at Cleveland when Kenny Pickett was like 6 of 38 for like 25 yards. And it was just it was terrible.
It was bad.
It was bad. And he said it at the worst time. And I feel for him because I think he could be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he's a guy you could rally around. I think that his intentions are, I'm sorry, I think he has well intentions.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, he spoke against the grain. He went against the grain, and they were like, "Ooh, shit, that sucks."
It is, Ian. Do you think there's a, and I mean the perfect example or correlation? I'm not sure what word I'm looking for here. I mean, Minkah Fitzpatrick also played at Alabama.
Mhm.
And all of us that follow any college football at all, you know that during the Nick Saban years, that is a highly structured, Bill Belichickian type system down there. You know, if you're 5 minutes early, you're late. You know, that type of stuff. He went to Miami under Brian Flores, also a Belichick guy, and it didn't work there. He wanted out. He came to Pittsburgh. He's obviously a lot happier here.
Mhm.
So is it very possible that you could have two guys who played in the exact same program in college, but they just see things very, very different? Because I've never heard Minkah say anything about the lack of rules or anything like that.
Scarps has a point here. Let's let Scarps make his point.
Go ahead, Scarps.
Okay, so Minkah never flat out said there was a lack of rules, but he said that there's guys here that don't want it. And then he was literally telling fucking Terrell Austin what defense to be in against the Green Bay Packers in the most crucial moment of the game. So like, I think there's more to the Najee, and if you want to say Minkah, I know you weren't saying that, but
Right.
I think there's maybe I'm wrong, but like I have a little bit of hope of the Steelers this year. And I know people are going to say I'm a hater or whatever, but I have a little bit of hope in them this year. And the reason is because they brought new people in.
Yes.
And I think that, and look what's already happened. They bring a new wide receivers coach in, and George Pickett's like, fuck you, man. Like, I'm not going to work harder than I should. And all those Pickens fans out there that think he's the greatest thing ever. And who was in this chat? Who was in this chat? He's not in here right now. I saw like Joe Biden right now. Who was in this chat? Who was in this chat last week when I said, or
Was
2
it
weeks
Matt?
ago?
Matt Smith?
No. 2 weeks
No?
ago, I said 2 weeks ago, I said George Pickens is the most overrated Steeler in my lifetime. And somebody in the chat was like, overrated. He's underrated. Is he really? He's already bitching at the wide receivers coach one day, the new wide receivers coach, one day into training camp because the wide receivers coach apparently was coaching him too hard. So
yeah.
Sorry. So go ahead.
No, I want Ian to answer a little bit about the Najee Minkah thing, but then we'll roll into the Pickens thing here because there's a lot of tentacles to that. Ian, go ahead.
Testicles.
I was very clear to make it an N, not an S.
Listen, I'm an asshole. I apologize. That's me.
Can I tell a side story before I answer the question?
Yes, talk
Sure,
to
why
me.
not?
All right. So my old Italian grandmother, when we did the like 7 fishes thing on Christmas Eve, used to go down to Woolies in the Strip District every year and buy like the fish to make, right? So when she was getting older, couldn't really drive anymore, my dad took her down one year. And me being a kid, we always had like fried squid. And if you've had fried squid or fried calamari, the tentacles are always much crunchier and more delicious than the rings are. The rings are fine, but the tentacles are better.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. So I told my grandma before she went, I was like, make sure you get like plenty of the tentacles because they're the better part of the calamari. So my dad takes her down, and this, like 4'10" little Italian woman with hair this big walks up to the guy at the counter and, per my dad, says, I want squid with lots of testicles. And my dad just lost it. And like, I was not there, but I was relayed this story that my, 80-year-old Italian grandmother asked for testicles at Woolies. Anyways, back to the question about Najee and Minkah. Najee's a smart guy. right? Since he was a
Agreed.
rookie and was drafted, I've said on this show multiple times, he either expresses the way he understands the offense and the running game better than most people, or he actually understands and knows a lot more about football than most people. And it could be both, but just like, even going back to his rookie year, the way he talks about plays and about the game, and it's like, well, this guy's supposed to block this guy, and this is my cue, and I gotta look at this, and it's my job to beat that safety on this play, and if I beat him, then I'm got 15 yards or whatever. I think Najee is really smart. I think having questionable line play in front of him the first couple of years really messed with his head, and we've even talked about this on the show, that he was second guessing himself. You would see him get the ball and hesitate and not run decisively. And that's where Jaylen Warren looks so much better, because right or wrong, Warren ran decisively, and he's like, I'm going to hit it in here. Yep. If I get stuffed at the line, I get stuffed at the line. If I break it, I'm going 70 yards. Right. And that was the difference really between the two of them. That Najee was almost thinking too much. He had that paralysis by analysis going on, but I think he's a smart dude.
I think so.
Minka's a really smart dude, to Ryan's point about Minka telling Terrell Austin what to call. But yeah. Yes, George, the salesman laughed at my grandmother.
That's good.
They all had a grand old time. But yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily has to do with Alabama in particular, that they both went to Alabama. I mean, Mark asked the question about Bama, but I mean, Saban's a good coach. They run an NFL style system. But also at the same time, I think the Steelers like to try and pick smart, heady players that know what's going on, or like to get those kind of guys on the team. So go ahead, Ryan.
No, I think it's important to you bring up a good point, Ian, and that is, Richard, don't mock me, but chat doesn't need to mock me. You bring up a good point, and that is, how much teaching or coaching do you need when you get to the professional level? And you got two guys from Alabama that I think are very smart, very very good players, that say, okay, I need X, Y, and Z to get me to the next level, or I don't need X, Y, and Z to get me to that next level. So I look at Minka as a guy that doesn't say much, just, his play speaks for itself. Thank you, TD. Tom Berenger. Tom Dessenberger. Tom Berenger. I'm going to call you Tom Berenger for the rest of the day. But
there's worse Toms. Maybe Tom Sizemore.
Oh, Aaron, thank you so much, Aaron. I look like the Rock from 1998. You piece of monkey trash. But you got two different guys. You got a guy that doesn't say much, and a guy that, when he's presented with it, says a lot. But like two very good players with different styles, that one of them is in a position that's coveted and is one of the highest paid safeties in the league, and another guy that's expendable. And
that's a great point, because that has to be factored in.
And he's not going to be, not at this team, at least. Somewhere else, he might be a top 5 paid running back. But I don't know. It's wild that Cecil Musick, who's this guy? Tom Sizemore. When did he die?
Yeah, he did. He did. And Cecil's correct. He had a horrible drug abuse problem. And in fact, that was just major segue here.
March
I was reading today. Today's the 20-some anniversary of Private Ryan coming out.
Oh,
and
he was really good in that.
Well, he was, and there was a story about Spielberg telling him, "Look, man, you're doing drug testing every single day, and if you test positive once, you're out. I'll reshoot all your scenes with somebody else. And he, obviously hung in there and did it, but he had obviously issues later on.
So
yeah, go ahead.
No, again, I've had some drinks. That's what the show's all about. But you got two players who are really good, both from the same program, but both aren't the same personality-wise, but both play different positions, and one position is more important than the other.
I think Ryan also brought up a good point about how much teaching do you need when you get to the pros. I think there's always more that you can learn. I mean, you go back to,
Sure.
interviews that Troy Polamalu gave, and he would always, first thing was, thank Dick LeBeau for putting him in a position to make a play. And some of that was Dick LeBeau knowing the guys that he had and what they could do and designing a defense to fit their skill sets. But, Najee Harris has had to play his entire NFL career with a coordinator that didn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. Like, it was,
You're right.
He's not wrong.
Some of this is on the Steelers, right? After the Steelers drafted Le'Veon Bell, they went and got Minnesota's running back coach who had developed Adrian Peterson. And they were like, hey, we're going to get you to come coach Le'Veon Bell because we think this guy has a lot of talent, but we need to take it to the next level. And, that jump Le'Veon made from year 1 to year 2 was incredible. And
came with that loss of weight, which we hear Najee's dropped maybe 15 too.
Yeah. So some of it is about the players, but some of it's also about the coaches that the Steelers have in place.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've heard a lot through the offseason, and I think we'll hear it more during camp now about this, the new coach, new offensive coordinator, new wide receivers coach, some other, new coaches around that I hope are going to make a bit of a difference. I mean, if we have a wide receivers coach that's actually coaching George Pickens and not just letting him do whatever he wants, I mean, there were clips that I know beat writers aren't supposed to post practice clips,
right?
There was clips posted from practices last year where Deontay Johnson, who is no longer here, and George Pickens were basically like sleepwalking through drills, and the other guys were like actually giving effort. And, some of that's on the coach there too, to be like, hey, you got to practice how you want to play. You got to, yeah.
And it kind of goes, Ian, back to what Najee Harris said, regarding those types of behaviors. Yeah. That's not what he was used to when he played in college. And, and again, like college pros, very, very different. That.
But I think also one other thing, I think some people generally, like this is true regardless of what profession you're in, whether it's football or anything else. Some people can self-motivate and say, all right, I'm going to go do this because it's what I need to do for this job.
Great
Some
point.
people need that fire lit under them and need, whether it's a boss or a coworker or whatever else, a coach, psychiatrist that you talk to, whatever it is, right? Somebody to just help motivate them and get their head in the right place and be like, all right, this is what I need to do and why I need to do it. And if you don't have those good motivators, those people are going to fall off, and the self-motivated people will be fine, but it's the other people that need that extra push.
Great point.
And some people are just like that, regardless of profession. It just is what it is. And, part of being a coach or a manager or whatever is just figuring out how to get all your people on the same page and all motivated and working towards a common goal. And that's a challenge sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue into Pickens. Look, new wide receiver coach. I have to believe, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I have to believe Mike Tomlin knew this about Azani, that he was not afraid to coach guys. And that might be, when I say that, I mean George Pickens, that might be a reason why he was the guy that was brought in. I mean, if you're talking about your star wide receiver and your wide receiver coach already getting into it on the first day of camp, we're not even wearing freaking pads yet.
Yeah.
Then that tells me that this is what was intended to happen. And Scarps, that relationship and that the way things work there better than I do. I mean, what is your take on the fact that these two were going at it already today?
You know, as soon as I saw that tweet, I was like, okay, I'm gonna look back at my time there and think of the people that were the wide receivers that were there at the time. It was like Hines. Okay, Hines knew how to lead, etc. And then it became Antonio Brown, knew how to lead, etc. And then it was like, oh, George Pickens is the only guy that could really lead, right? He's the only guy that can show what it's like to be a Steeler.
Yeah.
And he's never necessarily had someone to show him what it's like to be a Steelers wide receiver. So, and I've said this on the show, I think George Pickens is overrated. I think George Pickens is decent, but I think George Pickens also thinks that he is the best receiver in the game. And a guy like Azani, who says, that's not like Trump right now, Azani, a guy like Azani. But a guy like Azani says,
play the accordion.
yes, a guy like Azani who says, hey, dude, you need to do this way. And George is like, fuck that. I'm going to do it the way I do. And Azani's like, no, you're going to do it the way I tell you to do.
Right.
And I don't think necessarily that Pickens has ever had that. And
I agree.
is that wrong or right? I don't think it's either or. I think it's just the way it is. And that's going to be the way that Pickens has to go about his business. And, you know, Antonio Brown, regardless of how you feel about the guy, personally or professionally,
right?
Professionally, he went about his business the right way, and he worked his ass off.
Yep.
And he was committed to his craft, and I think that's important. I don't see somebody like George Pickens being that type of guy.
Ian, go ahead. I'll share my comments after.
Yeah, I know we have some Antonio Brown stuff to talk about too in a bit. But because Ryan Clark made some comments on his podcast.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yep.
I think the other thing with Pickens though is, just looking at where wide receiver contracts are, I have a really hard time seeing this team giving him a second contract. I mean,
I've been saying it. I said they haven't. I said that. Yeah. I said for months now that they weren't going to give him a second contract. I'm just saying. I'm sorry.
And we all know what happened when Antonio Brown got his money. But and George Pickens is a very, very talented wide receiver. But would you give George Pickens $30 million a year? That's
right now, no.
That's an insane amount of money. No. I mean, maybe if he goes out and it's hard. Arthur Smith's offense runs the ball a lot. We're not going to throw the ball. We're going to throw the ball some, but I can't see him putting up 2,000 yards, right? He's not going to have a Justin Jefferson type season. So Rick Holman joining the chat, Hall of Famer Rick, thank you for joining us. Bocce League, Rick, my Italian ancestry is loving what is happening right here.
This guy's got a bocce ball in one hand and a nice bourbon in the other hand. I guarantee
Rick is the best. You guys, Rick, I gotta know. Do you throw underhand with the backspin or do you roll it forward? So okay, at any rate, sorry, my Italianness is getting the best of me here. But I mean, Pickens is going to ask for $30 million plus a year, and right now the top 5 guys are all over $30 million a year. I can't see the Steelers paying him that kind of money. I could see them giving TJ Watt that kind of money because of what he's done for the franchise so far, but I can't see them giving George Pickens that type of money. So then he was a second round
Twitter
pick.
Will be so mad at you though.
So here's the thing. He was a second round pick. So that means he does not have the 5th-year option.
Nope.
So after 4 years, it's either you're franchising him at basically 25, 26, maybe more because it's when you franchise a guy, it's the average of the top 10 guys in the
Correct.
league. So, if you figure
So
the
at that
top
point,
5
yes.
are all above 30 million, the 10th highest paid guy I think right now is Devontae Smith at 25 million a year on average. So I don't see Pickens being here beyond his rookie contract. And then, but also at the same time, you've got these college offenses that are much more developed. You've seen college receivers be able to step in with much greater frequency than they had in the past. So we've had this debate on the show before that are wide receivers almost becoming expendable, that you have insanely talented guys that are going to demand a ton of money, but that middle market, almost like quarterbacks and running backs to an extent, is going to disappear, that you're either going to have to become a journeyman wide receiver and playing for, a little over the vet minimum, or, teams aren't going to want to pay guys top of the market and are just going to draft a rookie and be like, I hope this rookie can come in. And we've already seen that happen, right? There was that one draft where AJ Brown and Marquise or Hollywood Brown, and I think there was one other receiver that got traded all in that same draft. And those 3 teams all drafted wide receivers, right? Tennessee traded AJ Brown and drafted Traylon Burks, and Baltimore traded Hollywood Brown to Arizona and then drafted some guy who didn't pan out because it's Baltimore. And then there was one other one too. But you know what I'm saying though, right? That wide receivers looking for contracts are not only competing against other wide receivers, they're also competing against the college class that's coming out that can replace them.
And we are all old enough to remember when receivers came into the NFL, it was unlikely they were going to start right away because there was such an adjustment period. And it's completely changed where most of these guys can jump right in now. That transition isn't what it used to be. And man, yeah, that might be part of why the Steelers have had a lot of success. And, I do agree a little bit with Aaron that maybe you're going to have to pay one of these guys at some point, but until they run dry on drafting these guys, I don't know that that's going to happen. Vinny, welcome into the show. I know the picture you're talking about, Troy and Minka together on the sidelines today. Very cool. I love seeing the old guard with the new guard. I love that. It's always great. I'm curious if this is a sign of things to come with George Pickens this year, or if this is just working out the bugs now and these two eventually will get on the same page.
I think a lot of times, remember when they hired Todd Haley and there were all those reports of Ben hasn't talked to Todd Haley and Ben and Todd Haley don't get along, just because like Ben and Bruce Arians were 2 peas in a pod. And Ben and Haley eventually worked it out and got along fine. They scored a bunch of points. They won a lot of games. They brought a lot of joy to the fans together. Haley's knock was the red zone offense that didn't always execute when they needed it to. But at the end of the day, right, like as a player, you have to realize that the coach is there trying to help you get better. And I talked about some people needing motivation before, but some people get motivated in different ways, right?
Absolutely.
Some people respond really well to negative motivation, like you suck, you're awful, and they're like, fuck you, I'm going to go prove you wrong. I am the complete opposite of that, right? When I was in high school, our marching band director was like that, and he was like, you guys suck, you're awful, and I would just tune him off. I'd be like, well, screw you, I don't care anymore. Like, but when we got positive motivation, like you're doing great, keep at it, I was all gung-ho. I'm like, yes, we're going to do this. We're awesome.
That's a perfect example.
And that's just me. That's how I work. I know other people are different. Other people respond really well to negative motivation. I don't. That's me. But as a coach or a manager in office life or whatever else, you got to find where those buttons are with the people you're working with and how to push them. And, as a new coach, Azani maybe trying to find out what his guys are like and where those buttons are and how to push them. But I agree with Vinny in the chat that, some discipline in this receiving core is not the worst thing in the world either. But I think
especially
also,
as young as it is.
Yeah. And I think also having that experience at the quarterback position with Russ just in the building, even if he wasn't on the field today, throwing the ball. Like just having Russell Wilson there, he gave an interview the other day and ran through the whole offensive depth chart with a scouting report. And I was like,
That's
dude
quarterbacks, baby.
I know.
Yep.
And it's just like, the dude has been here half of an off season. He's done OTAs with these guys, and yeah, he had some of them out to California and threw the ball around with them a little bit, but like he had a whole scouting report on everyone and knew like exactly what he wanted out of all the guys. And I was like, it was impressive. And after a few years of Kenneth Shane Pickett, sometimes you forget what like real leadership at the quarterback position looks like.
Hater.
By the way, I did get followed on the Twitter X platform this week by Mr. Todd Haley.
Oh,
I think I'm going to cultivate a relationship, and we're going to get Todd on the show.
I would love that.
I think it's going to happen.
Todd's a wonderful guy.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen, kids. Stay tuned.
I won't be this drunk.
One more thing I want to get to before we talk a little bit about some of Scarps' training camp memories and things like this. Pat Freiermuth, Nick Faribaugh, a great friend of ours. He's with Penn Live now. He was at Steelers Now after he was here for a little while. He's been everywhere. He did a great job kind of posting some stuff from camp today and talked about how they were using Pat Freiermuth all over the field. Awesome. Great. Love to see it. But he's also entering the last year of his contract. Scarps, would you extend him now, or would you wait and let him get to free agency?
Wait.
Okay.
I think he has health issues.
Yeah.
Not above the neck, but he also has health issues above the neck. His best years were with Ben, and Ben is no longer here. And I'm not talking about Ben Anderson. I'm talking about Ben Roethlisberger. So, yeah.
Richard, no politics in this show. Come on, man.
All right, I'll chime in on Freiermuth.
Yeah.
I think it depends on what Freiermuth wants. If you can get Freiermuth for under $12 million a year, I think it's worth considering an extension, because the $12 million a year is going to be like top 10 tight end. But under that, you've got like Noah Fant in Seattle, Taysom Hill, Dawson Knox, Hunter Henry, Tyler Higbee. Like if you can get him between 8 to 12 million, that's the range of those guys that I just named. And like that's probably about the range where he is. Like I wouldn't go to the Mark Andrews, George Kittle 14 to 15 million a year range.
Right.
But if you can get him for under 12 million a year in this current tight end market, I wouldn't do a long-term deal with him, like maybe 3 years, just because of Ryan mentioned it, the concussion issues, the health issues.
Like 3 of them in 3 years.
It's scary,
Yep.
and maybe you even stack the contract with, workout bonuses or roster bonuses or whatever it is, just to kind of be like, all right, we're, the average number will be there, but we want to, if something happens with your health and you can't work out, then you're not gonna.
Yeah, they've got to have a safety net too.
Yeah. So I'd consider it at the right number. The thing Pat Freiermuth has, and Ryan's right, he was the best with Ben, but the thing Freiermuth has is almost that like sixth sense of, when a play breaks down, where do I need to get open for the quarterback to find me? Heath Miller had that. It's, Antonio Brown had that, right? It's a rare trait, but when you find guys that have that sixth sense, that almost like ESP connection with their quarterback of knowing what their quarterback likes to do and where they want to go with the ball and where you need to get to when the thing breaks down. And Pat and Ben had that year one, like right away. I don't think Pat and Kenny ever had it, but I don't know if Kenny ever had much going on above the shoulders anyway. So it was Kenny didn't know what he was doing when the play broke down. Like the quarterbacks that know what they want to do when the play breaks down, that's who you can kind of develop that with. So I'm kind of excited to see him with Wilson, or, even with Fields, who, when the play breaks down, Fields likes to use his feet, but
yes,
he will take chances and sling the ball down the field too.
No,
So
I think
there are opportunities there.
The point you're making about having veteran Ben and now he's going to have veteran Russell, and look, the beats were all talking within literally the first couple of days of OTAs that it was apparent that Wilson really, really liked Freiermuth.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that same relationship can happen, I'm still not extending them. I'm concerned about the concussions. I'm concerned just overall. But if they could do it in a moderate range where they have some safety nets, if he does get hurt, then I'd be more okay with it. But overall, I tend to agree with Ryan. I would wait.
I think one of the reasons they waited on the Najee extension or the Najee 5th-year option was they were like, we don't know what Arthur Smith's offense is going to look like and who's going to do well in it and who isn't. So we're going to wait on it. Like, at least that was the logic they said publicly. So
right.
I think, I think some of it this year is kind of that waiting game of let's see how the offense works and we'll go from there.
I agree. We want to talk a little bit about training camp and stuff. And obviously you guys know that Mr. Scarpino here spent a good deal of time at training camp, and something came up this week. Ryan Clark's his podcast called The Pivot. He was talking about training camp memories, and this is about 3 minutes long. I'll go ahead and play this for you, and then we'll get the take from Scarps himself on exactly what Ryan is talking about. So let me cue this up for you guys. If you haven't seen this, this is some great, great stuff.
The most vivid camp memory I have a ton, but the one I think of as soon as I think of camp was the day Antonio Brown got his money. In a moment I'm not proud of now. He was walking, and it was the day before, and I was like, he's going to be difficult to deal with when he get his money. And I said it out loud. I shouldn't have said it out loud. I will say that. He gets his money. We're doing one-on-ones. Keenan's playing defense on him, and, man, he routing Keenan up. I'm talking about killing him. So Keenan holding him now. It's all kind of stuff going on. He's like, tell him don't hold me. I'm the franchise. Woo, woo, woo. He talking big, right? So Coach LeBeau, who never really says anything, he's like, man, get to the huddle. So he cussed Coach LeBeau out. And then, Ike, Dickie? He gonna cuss Dickie? So now Ike fired up, you know what I mean? And so, man, like, he's steady going. So, like, there's a picture of it. Me and him face to face, Todd Haley in between us, Scotty Montgomery in between us. And I was telling him, I was like, man, this is gonna be it. Like, I was like, you're never gonna spend any of that money because I'm gonna finish it today. And, man, I remember, like, we fired up, and Troy looked at me, and Troy never snapped his helmet. And he always had his hair in a bun. And he looked at me, and he would never wear gloves. He looked at me, and he went, I said, oh, it's a different type of day now.
Yeah.
Now we blitzing. I'm flipping backers. Running backs that's trying to get to me. Troy slinging Ben around. We fighting every snap. We had to do it on our team named Kill Switch. Kill Switch hitting people across the middle on slants. Like, we lost total control of it. Then at the end, Ike and AB had got into it. Ike's helmet came off, so AB's face mask, like, cut Ike right there. Literally, bro, as slow as it could possibly be. Ike stood up. We break it down now. And Ike pigeon-toed as hell. Ike stood up. He ain't say a word. Break it down. He's taking his gloves off. Walk over to him. Fa. Bro, these boys start fighting on the field, dog. They're fighting on the field. And Ben being the peacemaker, Ben gonna tell me, get him, RC. I said, the hell I wish I would. He need to get beat up.
Yeah.
And obviously we needed him. He was one of the best players on the entire team. But, like, it was that type of atmosphere that day. Like, we knew how good he was. We knew how hard he worked. But, like, we were also the reason.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason we felt like the reason we were there was because of the man you cussed out.
Yeah.
Was because of the players you was beefing with. And man, when he started beefing with Keenan Lewis, bro, started cussing Keita, then he cussed Dickie. That's a day of football I will never forget, man. In all of my years, it's the most physical day of practice I've ever seen.
So, Scarps, you were there. And I remember when all that broke and everybody was, of course, going nuts and, about all this happening. What was your vantage point on how all that broke down?
So it was wild. You could feel it brewing. And fans that were in the stands and then fans that were on the field were like, even they were like, what the fuck's going on? Like, it was just such a weird moment. And the one thing that Ryan Clark didn't say is, and I feel
Right.
that happened was that Antonio Brown pushed Coach LeBeau away. And I'm not saying it was like an egregious push, but it was like a push.
He made contact with him.
He made contact.
Yeah.
And like Dick LeBeau was always like, okay, young fella, okay, but it was just this constant building of tension, and like guys were getting pissed off, and for those at home that have never been to training camp, and I was only there as a spectator and PR person. But guys start to get really, really pissed off at one another. It's just natural. And
you're with the same guys all the time.
Yes,
and it's hot, it's humid.
Yes, it's hot, it's humid. It's a ticking time bomb. And when Antonio Brown said something to Dick LeBeau, pushed them away, whatever it was. Whatever it was.
Yeah.
The defensive backs absolutely flipped the switch. And I remember Troy, like Ryan Clark said, his hair was always up. I hate to say he put his fucking hair down. Like, that's so strange to say. But I remember Troy Polamalu saying to Scotty Montgomery that all wide receivers are live, and meaning that all wide receivers
you are a target,
are fair game. And I remember he said that, and I remember looking at like my colleagues and be like, did Troy Polamalu just fucking say that in a practice? And like, it was just so weird. It was just such a weird. It was just such a weird time. So weird. Because as Ryan said in that video, Troy was rarely ever mad, and I've talked about this on the show. I've seen Troy really mad maybe 3 times in my life. But Ryan Clark was gonna he was ready to fucking kill Antonio Brown. Ike Taylor ready to kill Antonio Brown. Troy Polamalu ready to just fucking take his head off. And it's funny because, and Ryan Clark says this now, but that was 2012, and AB just got paid.
Yep.
And they paid AB because Mike Wallace wasn't there.
Right.
And maybe they fed the monster or whatever. I don't even know if that's a metaphor.
Right. I know what you mean. Yeah.
But AB didn't really do much in 2012. He was hurt a couple games. He was whatever. But Ryan's absolutely right. He acted like he was king shit, man. He was just different vibe. He got paid, whatever. And he acted like it. And, Keenan Lewis, and whatever you think about Keenan Lewis is irrelevant, but thank you, Claude. I'm working on it. But I just remember standing there and and seeing this all unfold and thinking like, holy fuck, is this really happening right now? Like, because I want to be real with the audience right now. Growing up, I was a freshman in college when I won Super Bowl 40. I was a senior in college when I won Super Bowl 43. And then as a 21-year-old intern, I walk into this organization with the same guys that I saw win Super Bowl 40 and Super Bowl 43. And I think, oh, these guys are they're a family. They're tight-knit. They're a group. And then 2 years later, I see this shit happen. I'm like, holy shit. It's just like a regular family.
family.
We fight, we bicker,
Yeah.
whatever. But I just remember, and this is nothing against Antonio Brown. And regardless, because before we had our beef, he was fine. But he really did. He really, really, really did act like Ryan Clark said he did. And that pissed off a lot of people because he was disrespectful to a lot of people. And that wasn't the only time they fought in that training camp. There was other times that they fought. And I think the second time 24 Ike Taylor and 84 AB fought. The second time is when like general manager Kevin Colbert was like in the middle and he was like fucking trying to break up people.
Right.
And I just remember being like, Jesus Christ, they're doing this shit again. It was wild. But you know what? I'm going to say this more about Ike than I'm going to say about AB. Ike was a 4th round pick.
Yeah.
Who won 2 Super Bowls and never got the credit that he deserved. And I think Antonio Brown was in a similar situation at that point. Because Antonio,
6th round pick, not as respected.
So, like, I think, and the funniest part about it is, and this is true, an hour after they're about to kill each other, they were eating fucking dinner together. Like they're sitting there fucking, they're getting their chicken breasts and their like you
white
say,
rice, family,
chicken
man,
breast,
family.
And it's wild because I was like, these guys gonna fight, and they're literally sitting there at dinner, like fucking drinking their water, eating their chicken and rice, and I'm like, holy shit, these guys are family. So
yeah,
that is true though about families. It's like, you will fight with your brother to the death, but then if anyone else attacks you, it's like, no, I'm the only one allowed to attack him. Like, you are not allowed to come after him. So
it's I mean, if you've been part of any sort of team, club, group, organization for extended period of time, then you know these things happen. I mean, you're putting together a lot of different personalities, people from different parts of the country in some cases, or even different parts of town, and different income statuses, and it eventually gets to these guys. It just does.
And that's another good point, Mark. Sorry to jump in on your toes here, but today was day 1 of training camp, right? They reported yesterday. They're going to be at Latrobe in these dorm rooms that I think have air conditioning now, don't they? They built a new dorm that has air conditioning, right, Ryan?
I think so.
Well, they didn't used to have air conditioning.
No, for years they did not.
Rudy and Benedict both have air conditioning. So
okay, so but still, all right. You're practicing in this bowl, right? Between these hillsides,
it's literally a bowl of humidity.
Yeah, it's hot, it's humid. You feel like it's 1,000 degrees down there. Some guys are out there playing for their job, going 100 miles an hour. Some guys know their jobs are safe and are just trying not to get injured, but are still trying to work on some things. And the TJ Watts, the Minka Fitzpatricks of the world, like, they don't need to go 100 miles an hour every rep, but maybe TJ's trying to work on one type of pass rushing move, right? So maybe he just keeps doing that move because that's the one he wants to practice and work on. But that's fine. That's where he is. But other guys are fighting for their career, trying to get a job with the team.
A lot of different approaches going on.
A lot of different approaches, and you put all these guys together for 3 weeks where you got to practice together in this bowl of humidity where it feels like it's 1,000 degrees. But then even when that's over, you still got to hang out with these people the rest of the time.
Yes.
They're the only people there. You're at a college campus during the summer where nobody else is there. So it's not like you can go see your family. You're alone with these dudes for 3 weeks, and tensions are going to boil up. That's why like that first preseason game is always one of the best things that happens. It's like finally you can hit somebody in a different color shirt. It's like we can finally take all our frustration out on somebody else. And actually, I think like the joint practice they're going to have with the Bills is going to be really good for that this year too, because it's like. And it happens to a lot of teams. So it's like finally we can just knock heads with somebody from another team, and and tensions boil up, and it happens to every team. It's not the end of the world if there's fights or whatever.
Isn't it fascinating though? And it sounds like get off my lawn guy, but when I remember I had a chance to talk to Craig Wolfley once and Tunch Ilkin once, and and they weren't complaining. They were just simply pointing out the differences between their generation and what happens now. And I mean, those guys not only were living together, they had no air conditioning, and they were doing basically 3-a-days.
Yeah.
They were going morning, afternoon, and then in the evening. And I mean, these guys now, the contracts are such that you can only have so much contact. You can only wear pads on certain days. I mean, it's a wonder any of these guys can even walk these days, in some regards. But that's good stuff. And I will also tell the audience, Ryan has shared some other things with us from camp that we will not be sharing, because we just can't. Let's just put it that way. And maybe Claude, maybe that'll come in the book. Maybe best thing I can tell you. Yeah. Guys, anything else from camp today that needs to be discussed?
I think I mentioned it already, but it's day one. Don't read too much into anything. They're still in shorts. They haven't even put pads on. Like, it's cool to see good things happen.
Yep.
But they're maybe going at 50% speed right now. If that,
you mean all the dimes Justin Fields threw today?
Oh, jeez.
Yes.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
Even preseason games aren't the same as regular season, aren't the same as playoffs. So it's a long road. This is step one. I think Phil Jackson used to say, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and step one, we're off and running. So it's a good first step. We're on the path, but it's don't put the cart before the horse. Don't read too much into anything. Temper your expectations a little bit. Just because Van Jefferson made one big catch down the field doesn't mean he's going to be,
he's not an all-pro.
The next all-pro. Yeah. Right. I mean, I like Van Jefferson, to be honest with you.
Sure.
I think he's a nice player, nice guy to have in the room, but I kind of feel like at best he's a number 4 receiver. Like, he's a guy who can back up, one of your outside guys, come in for a couple plays, do a couple things, but I don't think he's a number 2. So, Vinny, you're absolutely right.
So if I had to ask
you,
preseason
doesn't matter.
So Ryan, I'll give you this question first. At what point in the preseason do you think Omar Khan makes a move for a number 2? After the first preseason game, before, maybe after the third preseason, maybe right before the season starts, or does he not at all?
Yeah. Their number 2 is currently on the roster.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I understand Steelers fans have been clinging to this hope of Brandon Ayuk or DK Metcalf or some other fucking guy. Unless somebody significant gets cut, we're looking at what we're looking at for the wide receiver room.
Okay. All right. Ian, what do you think?
Yeah, I think they're going to mix and match personnel a little bit, not to the extreme extent last year where it was like you knew if Miles Boykin was in the game, it was a running play, or if Allen Robinson came in motion, it was a running play to that side. I don't think it's going to be that bad, but I think they're going to try some different things. They'll have Van Jefferson sometimes. They might use Calvin Austin sometimes. I think they're going to just kind of mix and match things depending on what play they want to run and whatever else is happening. So it's almost like in baseball when you have like a first baseman that's platooned versus like right-handed pitching or left-handed pitching, where you have like two guys that can play first base, but you're going to start the guy you want depending on who's pitching for the other team. Yep. I kind of feel like we're going to platoon wide receiver 2, or wide receiver 2 by committee, whatever you want to call it. That it's there's not going to be one guy who's the clear wide receiver 2, but I think multiple guys will get snaps depending on what type of play, what type of formation, all that other stuff.
Yeah, and it's funny because you hear Kes Watkins.
Yeah.
And obviously Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin, and then you've got, our buddy Derek, who used to be with us for a long time, and he's doing great work now for Steelers Now. And he was even talking about this Callaway guy, 6'1", 200 pounds, goes over the middle. It's like, Scarps might be right. Maybe the guy is on this roster. And maybe it will be a platoon type thing based on matchups and based on who you're playing. And I would not have guessed that at this point. I would have thought Omar would have, con artist his way into some kind of deal.
Yeah.
But, no.
I was just saying that, like, everybody acts like Omar is the greatest thing ever. And it's just like, he can only do what is allowed or what is
he doesn't have carte blanche.
Yeah, and it's almost like Kevin Colbert was the same way. So I think about that when you think about the general managers.
Yeah, I get it. And with that, we'll close it out for tonight. I think Ben will be back next week.
Hopefully not. I'm just kidding. I love you, Ben.
Yeah, well, hopefully he gets away.
No, he definitely needs to be back. We need 4 voices in this room because I am worthless. So
no, you're not.
Actually, what we need is a picture of Ben with Mickey Mouse. If he really, as Bozick says, is in the Mickey world tonight, we need that picture. I don't know. Did you guys happen to see his Facebook where he was on a ride and he looked scared out of his mind?
I don't know, but Tom Berenger over here is trying to catch up with me. And
hey, Tom Berenger not only was excellent in
Major League
platoon, but Major League as well.
Yeah,
what a range that guy had.
Yeah,
what range. And with that, we'll get out of here. Make sure you check out the site, steelcityblitz.com. We're all over the socials, Instagram, Facebook, all that other stuff. And thank you so much for jumping on here tonight. We had a great audience. We love you guys. And thanks for everybody that tunes in at your own time. I'm getting out of here. And don't forget, guys, go Steelers.
Ravens suck.